There are books that entertain us, books that inform us, and then there are books that haunt us. 1984 by George Orwell belongs to the last category. It doesn't sit quietly on a shelf after you finish reading it. It follows you. It watches you. It whispers questions into your mind long after the final page. And the most disturbing part is this: the world Orwell imagined no longer feels like a distant nightmare. It feels uncomfortably close. George Orwell didn't write 1984 as a prediction. He wrote it as a warning. A warning about power, about language, about truth, and about what happens when human beings slowly trade freedom for comfort, certainty, and safety. The novel is not really about the future. It is about human nature. And that is why it still matters. In Orwell's world, Big Brother is always watching. Cameras never sleep. Walls have ears. Privacy is a crime. Thought itself is dangerous. The government doesn't just control actions, it controls beliefs. It doesn't just punish disobedience, it erases the idea that disobedience could ever exist. The citizens of Oceania are not merely oppressed, they are shaped, molded, and hollowed out from the inside. At the center of this world is Winston Smith, an ordinary man with an extraordinary flaw. He remembers. He remembers that things were once different. He remembers that truth existed before it was rewritten. And this memory alone makes him dangerous. Because in 1984, the most radical act is not rebellion. It is thinking. The party understands something terrifyingly simple: if you control the past, you control the present. And if you control the present, you control the future. History in Oceania is constantly rewritten. Newspapers are altered. Records are destroyed. Yesterday's enemy becomes today's ally, and no one is allowed to notice the contradiction. The truth is not what happened. The truth is what the party says happened. This is not just a fictional idea. Orwell knew this firsthand. He had seen propaganda at work during war. He had watched governments twist language to justify violence, suffering, and control. 1984 is the distilled essence of that experience, exaggerated, intensified, and stripped of all illusion. One of the most chilling ideas in the novel is Newspeak. It is not just censorship, it is the destruction of language itself. Words are removed, simplified, hollowed out. Why? Because if you eliminate the words for freedom, rebellion, and justice, you eventually eliminate the thoughts behind them. A person cannot rebel if they lack the language to imagine rebellion. This is one of Orwell's greatest lessons: language shapes reality. When words lose meaning, truth collapses. When slogans replace thinking, obedience feels natural. In 1984, war is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. These are not jokes. They are tools. They train the mind to accept contradictions without resistance. This is called doublethink, the ability to hold two opposing beliefs at the same time and believe both of them. Doublethink is not stupidity. It is discipline. It is what happens when survival depends on mental surrender. And once a population masters doublethink, power no longer needs force. The people police themselves. Big Brother, interestingly, may not even exist as a real person. He is a symbol, an ever-present face, a psychological anchor. The party doesn't need Big Brother to be real. It only needs people to believe in him. Fear doesn't require reality, it requires belief. This is why 1984 feels so modern. Today, surveillance does not always come from governments alone. It comes from devices we willingly carry. Cameras we install in our homes. Platforms where we document our lives voluntarily. We trade privacy for convenience, data for connection, and slowly normalize being watched. No one forces us. That's the most unsettling part. Orwell's world was built on fear. Our world is built on distraction. But the result can be similar: passive obedience. Another core lesson of 1984 is the destruction of individuality. The party does not want creative thinkers, lovers, or dreamers. It wants functionaries. People reduced to roles. Emotions are dangerous. Love is dangerous. Loyalty must belong only to the state. Winston's love affair with Julia is not just romantic, it is revolutionary. Their relationship is a private space in a world where privacy is forbidden. Love becomes an act of resistance because it creates loyalty outside the party. That is why it must be destroyed. And it is destroyed. What Orwell shows us through Winston's fate is brutal but honest. A system that controls truth will eventually control the soul. Winston is not just imprisoned. He is broken. His beliefs are dismantled piece by piece. The goal is not confession. The goal is conversion. The party does not want martyrs. It wants believers. In the end, Winston doesn't just say he loves Big Brother. He truly does. His inner resistance is gone. The human spirit, once bent far enough, does not snap, it dissolves. This is the darkest lesson of 1984. Freedom is not lost all at once. It is surrendered gradually. Comfort by comfort. Fear by fear. Lie by lie. People often ask whether Orwell was pessimistic. But 1984 is not hopeless. The hope lies in awareness. Orwell wrote the book so we could recognize the patterns before they become permanent. He believed that if people could see how power operates, through language, fear, and control of truth, they might resist it. The novel asks uncomfortable questions. Would you notice if history changed? Would you speak up if truth became inconvenient? Would you resist if resistance meant isolation, suffering, or loss? Or would you adapt? The danger Orwell warns us about is not just authoritarian governments. It is the human tendency to accept lies when the truth is uncomfortable. To choose safety over freedom. To trade responsibility for certainty. Big Brother does not arrive with chains. He arrives with promises. Promises of order. Of protection. Of unity. And slowly, silently, he asks for more. A little less freedom. A little less truth. A little less individuality. Until one day, people wake up and realize they no longer know how to think without permission. That is why 1984 is not a book about the past or future. It is a mirror. And the question it asks is simple but terrifying: if Big Brother were real, would you recognize him? Living in Big Brother's shadow does not require telescreens or secret police. It only requires silence. It only requires forgetting. It only requires surrendering the responsibility of thought. Orwell's final warning is not about tyranny. It is about apathy. As long as people care about truth, power has limits. As long as people remember, lies can be challenged. As long as individuals think independently, no system is absolute. 1984 endures because it reminds us that freedom begins in the mind. And once the mind is conquered, everything else follows. The shadow of Big Brother grows longest where people stop questioning. And the only way to step out of that shadow is to do what Winston tried to do at the very beginning: write the truth, even if no one is listening. Think freely, even if thinking feels dangerous. And remember, because memory itself is an act of resistance.